Welcome to the Omnibus Show, a program for people who are interested in everything, with deep conversations on a wide variety of subjects. And now your host, Dave Gibbs.
Hello, and welcome to this episode of the Omnibus Show, the program for people who are interested in everything, with deep conversations on a wide variety of subjects. This episode, we'd like to welcome back Jeff Worrell. He is the at-large Carmel City Councilman, now in his third term in office. And we had you on episode 9.
Yes.
And we talked about your life experiences and being in office. And we've got some interesting discussion coming up. Welcome back, Jeff.
Thank you very much. What episode is this now?
Episode 9. This one is 52.
Wow.
Well, today's
Congratulations.
52. I'm sorry. Will be 53.
Congratulations.
Well, thank you very much. We're still around.
Yes.
But it's great to have
Yeah, it's
you. A
great.
lot has happened in the past year. You were voted back in office.
I was.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
It's great to have you back. Can you please run us through this last year since we saw you last time? How did you had the primary and then you had the election in November. And can you run us through that and that experience and how that cycle went for you?
Sure. It's a very exciting time now because we have so many new city councilors and a new administration. So we're very busy and everything is new, everything is changing. So it's really, really good for Carmel. But my experience through the primary, I was able to get through the primary and ran with two other colleagues at large. Had our team along with Sue Finkam, who then became Mayor Finkam, and the November election turned out really well for me.
Well, fabulous. That is. I'm glad that election cycle went through so well for you. And as I understand, you were the one who got the most votes in the November election. Congratulations on that.
Thank you.
That means people like you.
Well, thank you. I hope it says that the way I've conducted myself is the right way.
Yeah.
That's the only thing I can take from it. So.
Yeah, well, certainly you're the right man, because much of our discussion today will be on the civics
Yes.
in local and national politics. And heaven knows we need a lot of that right now. And you have a reputation for that, if I can assert that. And so I think that has come home to roost in a good way, that you had such a popular outcome. And so, welcome back on that. We're now in April going into May. At the time of the shoot, it will be May when this show is on. But can you tell us about how the new season, how the new year has gone, since the election, since you've been in the new term, I should say.
Sure,
You've been
sure.
in office.
Yeah. Well, lots going on. I think probably the biggest change in my life is working on Civility as kind of a community effort, trying to foster a larger culture of civility. Over on the government side, everything is new. So Mayor Finkam has her Elevate Carmel Plan, which is 52 different things that she wants to do. Right now we're heavily involved in trying to figure out housing in Carmel. We hear an awful lot about apartments versus ADUs or, single-family homes versus multifamily, all that kind of thing.
Correct.
She's working with the Housing Task Gorce group to try and come up, hopefully in July. It might be a little bit later, but in July is kind of the target to have some guidelines. How does a city councilor help her in her goals and help our community in deciding yes to this project, no to that project?
Yes.
That's a big thing right now. There are other ordinance issues and things like that we can talk about that I'm working on, but frankly, it's really been about everybody kind of gelling and figure out how to work with each other. We have, out of our 9 counselors, we have 8 Republicans, 1 Democrat. I think it's gone very well for us to all come together. 6 of them are new counselors out of the 9, so to come together and work together and try
It's
and
a lot
serve
of
the people.
training in that, isn't that?
It is, but all of them have spent a tremendous amount of time working with department heads and different departments, learning, fire department, police, all that kind of stuff.
Well, that's quite good, and it's good that everyone's working together.
Yeah.
And, the last time I saw you out, you were busy though, was at our solar eclipse. I
Yes.
feel like saying our solar eclipse because it was such a citywide thing.
It was amazing.
And I remember going home, and even I lived near Central Park, and
Yeah.
there were loads of people out there having their own get-together.
Yeah.
And so that actually was a good coming together. I'm glad we could use another solar eclipse, but that was a great event, and you did a great job hosting out at the gazebo, because a lot of people came out for that, and we had Dan Kelleher, who did
Yes.
the camera with
Yeah.
the telescope, and that was quite exciting.
Right, yeah.
So that was a great
I'll tell you
event.
I'll tell you what was so interesting that I found, just a little tidbit,
Mm-hmm.
personal experience. So you were there, but you know that throughout Carmel, I think kind of the word was stay home and enjoy it, because no one knew what traffic would be like. But we were packed at the gazebo.
You were?
People were, if you know the fountain, wall-to-wall people, up the stairs, even bigger than what I've ever seen for Carmel Fest. And the interesting thing, at one point I said, hey, if you're from out of state, raise your hand. And I'm telling you, Dave, 50%, maybe more, of that crowd was from out of town. My wife had set up, we had some people come down from Michigan to stay with us, so we were there. And around us was Florida, Wisconsin, Atlanta, Georgia. No one from Carmel within a stone's throw.
Wow.
So it was really interesting, the kind of crowd. And I said, you guys drove to Carmel, Indiana just for this, or are you seeing your daughter or seeing grandkids? Nope. We came just for this from Atlanta.
It was a great event.
Unbelievable.
And there was people licenses from everywhere. And even Dan, to take good advantage of the situation, he had an earth scientist, geologist, but he had an event that was the next day. It was the next day at, I believe, the Palladium. And he had scientists from all over the world.
It was wonderful.
And so that's great. And the thing is, I grew up with, I'm from Northwest Indiana originally, and I grew up with events in Chicago growing up, and they could get really out of hand. And but I talk about on the topic of civility. Everybody was great. They enjoyed themselves. It wasn't like they put themselves in a bag, but it's like it was really a great event, and everybody did great together, and it was a very enjoyable city event. I know other places had events, but I don't know everything, but I hadn't heard about such an event anywhere like what we had. So before I become the Chamber of Commerce, congratulations on that. You were the host on that. And going on with what you were talking about, while we're on the city and the new season, can you tell us about some of the subjects that are coming up? Anything that you're working on in the council.
Sure. And
things that matter for the city, that people who are life learners, who no matter where you live, can get involved with their local communities and learn more about how their city or their town works.
Yeah.
And could you please tell us about what's going on?
Sure. There are multiple major projects going on right now. As you know, Mayor Finkam has established a kind of a marketing rebrand, study, redo, and so that's an ongoing thing. I already mentioned the Housing Task Force. Over on the council side, we've got really kind of 4 targets. Number one, we're doing a full audit of all of Carmel's debt just to try and help people feel more comfortable with what we've been talking about for 28 years, and a lot of people tend to use that as a kind of a lightning bolt.
Yeah, lightning
rod, I should
Yeah,
say.
exactly.
We're also doing
That's a good thing.
it is a good thing. And I said that at council. It's going to cost some money, but I said it would be a good thing for people to feel comfortable about what their city government has done over the last 25 years when we accumulated that debt and why. Number two, we're doing a overhaul, a full review of the UDO, which is the Universal Development regulations, what we all live and breathe by and abide by.
Yes.
For, you can't have a house this size or you can't have a house that size. So the council is going to work on that. The Land Use Committee is working on that. For me, a couple of hot button issues that really have just come from residents making a complaint or having a concern. Number one, is I've introduced a regulation that will modify our UDO, planning and zoning, in order to regulate non-dwelling short-term rentals. Now,
That is?
What is, yeah. Okay, so we already do when Airbnb, everybody knows what Airbnb
Sure,
is. So
you rent your house out,
We
et cetera.
already regulate that. Well, a thing that has been happening, Dave, is now people will rent components of their home by the hour. So
Really?
you have a nice pool, you can put it on Swimply, and someone can rent it for 3 hours. You have a basketball court, you have a pickleball court, you have a trampoline in your backyard. There might be someone who wants to rent that. And it all sounds great, but, and I kind of use this as an example, I think the original plan was you rent your pool, maybe you've got 10 9-year-olds coming over for somebody's birthday party. That might be okay and might work, but when you have 20 to 30 people showing up, who it also includes alcohol and parking.
The frat party element.
Yes, and scantily clad. And then no regard, I mean, this is on a cul-de-sac. We have one specific area.
Gotcha.
Over on the west side of Carmel, a typical Carmel cul-de-sac, 2-story homes, well-kept, well-maintained, but you've got families in there, and then all of a sudden come rolling in on a Saturday at 3 o'clock in the afternoon until midnight are people who rented the pool. They want to have fun, and they want to be loud, and they want to be other things, So we're going to try and regulate that through our zoning.
Yes, because now I'm going to do my civics part right now. A couple of years ago, I had an issue because I had former neighbors who were out on 4th that did their fireworks until midnight.
Yeah.
And I had 2 older dogs at the time, and it was stressing them out. And they were like, their stuff was getting in everybody's yard, and they just, whatever. And I went out, because I'm the person, I will go out and I will talk with the person. And she just said, we can do what we want, we can do it. And I thought, well...
Not very neighborly.
Not very neighborly, and that was a quite rude response, but it's like, what can you do at that point? And I think the regulation was, it's not fireworks, you can do that till midnight, isn't that?
So that is a state law.
This
is
state
a
law?
great example of the state. I was with State Representative Donna Shibley on Friday. We talked about this. That she was trying to get legislation passed that would bring it back to the local government could determine. 3 years ago, Dave, we had 2 homes burned to the ground because of errant fireworks in a neighborhood. One went through the front window and into a bedroom. Thank goodness no one was in that bedroom, and the house caught on fire, was destroyed.
My goodness.
So you were right to be out there and aware. I'm still hopeful that we can get some legislation passed.
Gotcha.
The last thing
But it plays into
it does.
the same mindset of neighborliness.
Right.
And if you just have like the kids come over and they have a couple hours, they're not going to stay up to midnight. But they have their ice cream and that can be all contained in someone's yard.
Right.
But when you get people who are grown up and should know better, and doing like things that people did on weekends in college, that sort of, am I right? Is that,
You're
that's
exactly right. We would have had no problem. As a matter of fact, we have multiple homes in Carmel doing this, and generally speaking, we don't have problems. But you have one or two homes where they're so close to the neighbors, or they just have no rules and they don't care, then it gets out of hand and we have to step in.
Sure. No, that's understandable, because it's like, that makes it, when things get out of hand, it's always best. You can go and confront people, and I just try to talk civilly with them, but you get it as far as you can. And some people get a little more fiery about
That's right.
things. So it's best to have, the city step in when you need to. But if you have standards and everybody knows where things are at, that's why I'm a due process guy. You have the standards, it's like we play by the rules. Okay, that's where things fall.
Carmel Councilman Jeff Worrell is taking action.
The amount of activity is it's a commercial business that is occurring on a typical Carmel cul-de-sac, and it's just gone too far. So what I think we have to do is make sure that we set some rules that everybody can live by, and then we all agree we are going to honor those rules.
So my ordinance will, number one, not even issue a permit if your HOA covenants do not allow it.
Gotcha.
That's the great first step. So HOAs may take that into consideration as you look at your bylaws, your covenants. But then we require the owner to be on site. We require insurance. We set up certain number of participants, the hours, where do you park all these cars? So all those kind of things will get worked out as it goes through the Plan Commission process, and hopefully it will come back to City Council for further review, probably in June, I would suspect, June or July.
Okay, well, great. And with the new season, the new year, anything else you'd like to bring up with us?
The last one is, and this one has been misunderstood, I think, but I proposed a roundabout speed limit. Now that just sounds insane, because you can't go, well, some people can, but the typical person can't go around a roundabout at a very fast speed.
Carmel City Council member Jeff Worrell is looking to fix that.
Right now, our city engineer already has the ability to install raised crosswalks. However, those cost each of them $50,000 per roundabout. So the other thing that we're looking at is a speed control.
So what I'm trying to explain to folks is that this really is about the speed that occurs in the 200 to 250 feet, where you first see that sign with a yellow 15-mile-per-hour sign.
Yes.
That's a suggestion. We can't enforce that, but at 200 feet, that sign is there saying you need to slow down to 15 miles per hour. It's no different than that sign that occurs when you've got a hairpin turn at an exit ramp.
So before you come upon the crosswalk.
Right.
As opposed to right there, like a stop sign.
Right. I call it the entry and exit zones for a roundabout. That's where the crosswalk is. And what we're really trying to do is just give pedestrians more time, well, actually give drivers more time to react. To a pedestrian. So studies show that if we can slow speed, drivers have more eye-to-eye contact with pedestrians than when they're in the 30 to 40 mile an hour range. And some of our roundabouts can be a straight shot, so you have people, flying through. And so it has been controversial, because I get emails, don't stop traffic, you're going to slow us down too much, it's going to make traffic worse. But we do have, I did a survey.
Yes.
And I had 40% of the people, my constituents, told me they felt unsafe crossing in a crosswalk. In a roundabout.
Normally, I would say, all that extra signage, that's just putting up a sign for everybody, like, it's like an elementary school almost. But actually, that's a good idea, because there's certain spots, like on Illinois 106, I had somebody hit me there because they didn't know the road. And then up on 116th in Illinois, that's another hot spot. And my thought is always, many people were not brought up with these. I've lived in places where there were roundabouts, so I learned that way. But many people haven't, so I think that makes sense.
Yeah.
Because you kind of get used to it, like, okay, this is what we got to do, so boom, they just kind of drive through and so forth.
Well, the other thing that is to think about is that Carmel is the only community in the world to have 150 plus roundabouts. So we're almost saying this is the next step. We've built fast traffic, the ability to keep moving.
Right.
But now, because they are one roundabout right after the other, there is very little opportunity to break that up. Now do we need to say, in the evolution of roundabouts,
Sure.
in a typical American suburb, is it now time to deploy some kind of roundabout speed design
Yeah.
controls? And we know that, and I've had help from the Federal Transportation Administration. They have been very helpful to me because they view us as kind of their incubator and a good place to try things out. We also know that raised crosswalks, the rapid flashing beacons, all those things in conjunction with speed, it's not just one thing, it'll probably be in multiple things.
Can I put in a voice for lowering curbs?
Lowering curbs, tell me about.
Every now and then, particularly with the shop I'll go unnamed where I get my gas, they have the curb comes out too far. It's the curb that's about 3 feet high, and I've my peripheral vision may be going, but it's like you clip it and it just
Okay.
drives you nuts.
Oh,
And
I got you.
The
Okay.
high curbs.
Okay.
Well,
Well,
that's my remonstrance.
That's how these things start. Someone will hit me with something, and we look at it and decide if it's worth tackling.
Well, there you go. Well, thank you very much.
You bet.
We will be back. We're going to take a brief break. We'll be back in Chapter 2, and we will talk about civility and the new election year. Hello, and welcome back to Chapter 2 of the Omnibus Show. This week's guest is at-large Carmel City Councilman Jeff Worrell. And it's great to have you back. You're always a good conversationalist, Jeff.
Thank you. Thank you.
And recently, you have spoken with the author, Alexandra Hudson, who's also known as Lexi, on her book, The Soul of Civility. We've got a fiery election cycle this year, particularly with the national elections. It's been fairly civil, I think, here locally. But Alexandra came out with this book, The Soul of Civility, and you two had spoken locally. Can you tell us about the Soul of Civility and about your interactions with her in the public?
Sure. Happy to. Any chance I get to talk about civility, I'm happy to do it. So I had
We can show them.
this is the book. And this book struck me. I ran across it. I can't even remember exactly where I ran across it. But the subtitle, Timeless Principles to Heal Society and Ourselves. When I read that, I said, this book is for me, because I had literally just come off my November campaign.
Yes.
I had, in my campaign, I was running at large. I had reached across all political spectrums, Republicans, Democrats, tried to capture every vote that I could, because I've always served everyone. If you write to me, I really don't care what your persuasion is, even though I'm running as an R. And I received some criticism for doing that from my colleagues. And so when I saw this, I went, this is just not, that attitude is not civil. I want to be civil. So I decided to reach out. I picked up the book, started reading it, and in there, it just spoke to me for whatever reason. I don't know exactly why, but every page, I couldn't turn it fast enough. It was just the answer to what I was feeling was occurring, in Carmel with our elections, schools, whatever the issue was, people writing to me and complaining that their neighbor's dog is pooping in their yard. Have you talked to him? Well, no, I'm not going to talk to him. Well, that's not civility. So I thought there was an opportunity to try and start talking about it, bringing it to Carmel, and try and get people to talk about it with me.
That's very good, because that sort of short circuits the Hatfield-McCoy thing, and because that can always happen, can't it? But, the one thing I always say to people like that, because, I've got strong views myself personally, but the same thing that I always think is that person, whoever they are, can change their mind. And some things I mature in my thinking, but someone who you may have a total opposite view of, or in this case that you brought up, somebody whose dogs are doing their business on...
That's probably a better way to say it than what I just said.
Well, I have this comic that I always put out on social media every year when it pops back up. It's a dog. He's sitting at a desk with his typewriter.
Yeah.
The guy's calling the neighbor. He says, I want to call you up because your dog is doing his business on my yard.
Yeah.
But, that way, you nip it in the bud, you get conversation going, and when you're closer to people in personal contact, like we're talking, no matter who it is, after a while, that interaction, you can't just react like you do when you're in your home by yourself, and you know what I mean? You're looking at something on a screen, social media or the news. When you're face to face, that makes it more personal in a way that forces you to hopefully act more civilly.
Well, I'm not sure that that's what happens, though.
But that's true, because there's a lot of people that aren't necessarily that way. But a lot of times, I think this is my observation, I'm not being scientific about it, but generally when you meet people in that moment, that can be a positive thing. Now, when people are coming at each other in a conflict, that's a bit different.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. So what I see in my work as a servant of the people and trying to solve problems is that the approach has gotten, over time, is much different today than it was when I started 9 years ago. And that's a short period of time.
That is a short period.
And there are experts, and Lexi in her book tries to figure out, why that is. Not going to go into that here.
Sure.
But what I thought I could do, and I reached out to Lexi and I said, is this possible? And she said, well, of course it is. Could we start talking about civility, define civility, make sure everybody knows what it means to be civil, and it's not what we think it is, and I want to get into that a little bit.
Oh, please.
And try and foster a culture of being more civil. We're not going to solve it. We're not going to eliminate it. It's been around since since the Greek gods. Yeah, exactly. But it is very interesting when, and at that first meeting we had we had a standing room only. We had to actually
limit.
This is
the Carmel Library.
Yeah, Carmel Library back in January of this year. We had to limit. Unfortunately, I had to turn people away. I felt so bad. But there's a hunger out there to learn more about civility. So one of the things we did was...
That's a good thing.
It really is.
That's good. That's a hopeful thing.
Yeah, it is very hopeful. It also says, hey, there is a problem. So, but trying to define the difference, she did a great job of explaining the difference between being polite and being civil. A lot of people actually confuse those terms and will say, well, if I'm a polite person, I'm a nice person, does that also mean I'm civil? And it does not. There are many polite people walking around who are very uncivil.
Gotcha.
So she defines it. I was going to just to get it right, but
Sure.
But it is, she defines civility as a disposition of us as to the way we think about the other people that we're going to disagree with, we're going to approach, whatever that is. So she says civility is a disposition, a way of seeing others as being endowed with dignity and inherently valuable. So I'm going to respect you. So now my actions will be motivated by this respect for you, that we're moral equals.
Mm-hmm.
And yes, we're going to disagree. We're going to fight to the death to try and convince each other. But at the end, could we still go have, as Tip O'Neill and Ronald Reagan did, could we still go have a cigar and a bourbon?
Yeah.
You know, that's what I'm
at
looking for.
the end of the day.
Because in my work, I sometimes have to tell people what they don't want to hear,
course.
or I have to disagree with my colleagues, or I have to disappoint, someone who wants me to vote a different way. And so this has been extremely helpful to me.
Yeah, that is good, because I think that, one could go on, having been a history student, and one could go on about history and all of these things. And I think the views of people, how we view people, is a huge, I think that, for me, I think the whole idea of imago Dei, that gives people value.
Mm-hmm.
And they are who they are. They may not live up to the way they should be or are supposed to be, but the
course.
thing is,
Yeah.
there is a value there that is beyond what I think of them.
That's right.
And so and I think that is much a part of the founders' views of our society, even though we have a very imperfect history, with the human condition, but that's a good starting point, because it gives some people somewhere to build on. And that thank you for bringing that up, because that takes it to the next level of how you see the other person.
That's right. And if I could just take it one step further,
Please
this
do.
has been huge for some of our interactions from January to now it's May, is that if we're going to disagree, if I just cannot ever come to your side of the issue, whatever it is, I'm going to do so without the intent to harm you, to embarrass you, to hurt you in some way or knock you down a peg. That has been another thing in some of our workshops that we spent some time on that people find helpful. Okay, I used to want to, bury you. I'm not so sure I want to bury you now.
Right.
I want to try and understand your point of view. Sorry, I can't accept it, but I don't necessarily want you to be hurt by I don't want to gain points by knocking you down some or hurting you. So that's the other component in our daily interactions. Neighbor across the back fence, we're fighting over, the tree or whatever, which happens all the time. And it's not about getting so angry that we want to hurt each other.
Yeah, that's a very good point.
And, social media, anonymously, you can hurt people. And I've been on the losing end of that when someone says you're doing X and, so trying to get rid of that.
Yeah, that's why I'm not the greatest fan of forums. Digital forums online, and I'll be critical now, is that it's usually the hostile person who is the bomb thrower tends to win, because it's just the MO of some people. They don't care, and they will say anything.
That's right.
So they'll cross the boundary line, and it's like, this is over. And so you can't win unless you become more than they are. And it's like, that just gets bad. But, that's very good and helpful that you had that. Now, you had 3 events with this.
We had the huge kickoff event at the Carmel Library.
Yes.
40 days later, we had a second event, and we went to the west side of Carmel that time, the Village of West Clay. We were at the meeting house. Lexi was there, and we now got more into detail, had a great crowd, a lot of interaction. In that one, I posed to the audience the opportunity to consider a pledge that our political candidates would take. And we went through my experience, how that wasn't going to work. And so then I asked them to help me create a pledge of what the community expects from our candidates. So I had originally proposed a candidate pledge. That turned out to be a learning lesson for me. Not, I was beginning to be used as a wedge. Yes, this side, oh yeah, we'll sign it, and this side, I'm never signing that. Who's going to be the referee, et cetera. So I said, okay, let's work on some community standards.
Gotcha.
And we're working on that right now.
Well, that's great because I think that things will happen and there will be conflicts. And I think that, but I'll step back from my pondering, is that really, I'm going to make an observation. National, international politics are so out of control. They're so chaotic right now. The best thing for people to do is really be involved locally with their communities, because that's where they're going to make the most impact. They can get all riled up about national and international politics, etc., but it's really where they make the most impact is locally in their own homes, where we live, and that's what you're talking about. But this is opening Pandora's box. How do you see this as expanding towards the 2024 election cycle? Is that let me just say, what would be your thoughts for the listeners, for the public, on going into this very divisive season?
Yeah. Well, the first thing is, I cannot affect state or national politics with this program. So I am. So what I'm trying to say to the people of Carmel is, here we can try and be more civil to each other in our daily interactions as a community, but they'll say, Jeff, you can't fix this. This is not fixable. You're never going to solve it. Or to your question on a bigger scale, I can't control that. I can't probably affect it at all, but I can be more civil in my interactions. So when some candidate from some senator or whatever does something that I think is uncivil, I may log that. It may or may not make a difference in how I vote. That's not the goal. The goal here is in our daily interactions, our social media, our dealing with my third grade child's teacher, trying to be more respectful, trying to be more kind, trying to approach issues with empathy, with trust, with some of these guiding principles that are important.
Yeah, well, thank you for that. Now, with that, going on to again with this new season in 2024, could you please tell us anything else that's coming up that you'd like to share with us?
Oh, yeah. So thank you. So we have, coming for Civility, I'll start there. We are putting together kind of a leadership group, because the primary challenge that I've had is to take all the ideas. People write to me every day, you should do this, you should do that. So I am writing a column in the Kern and Carmel on a weekly basis, trying to communicate civility, that regard. But we've got to get a group together in order to keep this momentum going, because there's a lot of momentum going for it right now.
Yeah.
Going forward, I want to be a good advocate for Mayor Finkam. She's got great ideas, new, fresh ideas, things that she is going to need help with. And so I am looking forward to advocating for her in order to help her to keep her agenda going.
Sure.
I believe in what we've got going in Carmel, and I want to make sure it doesn't stop. And she has promised that that's not going to stop. It may be different, but it's not going to stop. And new police chief, new director of economic development, new CFO now, which is a new position. We've never had a CFO before. So lots of things she's trying to get her arms around managing the city, and I'm an advocate of that.
Because that's essentially what a mayor is. A mayor's the governor of the city.
That's right.
Where you're the manager.
That's right.
And
day to day.
And the day to day. And I was thinking while you were saying that, I said, well, she's doing a pretty good job. The garbage is getting picked up and the streets are clear.
And the trains are running on time.
And the trains are running on time.
That's right. We tease her about that, but yeah. So and then the other thing I've seen is she's very supportive. she just announced the I can't remember what they call them, but the money given to the arts organization, the grants, I should
Yes,
say,
the
the grants
grants.
were all now distributed to all of our arts organizations. She's keeping that going. Just worked with her this weekend at a gala for our Carmel Youth Assistance Program.
Nice.
There's just so many things that we want to make sure don't get left behind and get thought about. But we have, I'm on the Carmel Fest committee. We will have great fireworks this year. One show
Nice.
on July 4th, where typically we had 3. Last year we changed that. Huge show at the ice stadium. The Carmel Ice Stadium is where that will be. So wherever you are in Central Carmel, you'll be able to see those fireworks.
Very nice.
And I'm just trying to be as helpful and as positive as I can be. And certainly if citizens have an issue or something that they want help with, I am raring to go. This is what I do.
Well, we can put some of the links, a link to the book,
Yep.
and also to City of Carmel in the description notes.
And maybe you can put my email in.
If you'd like.
Yeah, sure. That's what I do. So I'll give you a couple.
Hopefully you'll get civil emails.
Yes. Oh, I was going to say that's something that I've been noticing lately when people are sending me an email of something they disagree with, like the speed or like a vote that I'm getting ready to take on some projects. They always mention civility in there somewhere.
Oh, good.
And I thought that was interesting. The one I just got this morning as I was waiting for this, it said, "I promise to be civil in my disagreement with you." And I thought, okay, that's what it's all about.
That's very good.
Send them to me. So
You've connected with those people.
I'm seeing some results.
Well, that's good. And with that, it's also showing that what you and the mayor are working on, and the other councilman,
Yes.
is getting the local people involved.
Involved, yes, great point. Transparency, connected, collaboration, those are all key words right now.
Great. Well, Jeff, thank you for being with us again.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
It's great
This was
having you
fun.
on. Yes, it really was. Well, that is it for this episode with at-large Carmel City Councilman Jeff Worrell. And we'd like to thank our sponsor, Hotel Carmichael. And we are recording today in Feinstein's. And we look forward to being with you on our next episode of The Omnibus Show.
If you enjoyed this program, please like, share, and subscribe to continue the conversation. For the Omnibus Show newsletter, please sign up at theomnibusshow.com.